Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast, the space for entrepreneurs on a quest for unwavering certainty and purpose. I'm your host, Lauren, and each episode is a compass guiding you through authentic conversations, unraveling the mysteries of your human design chart, and offering tools from the remarkable guest. Join me as we embark on a journey to manifest greatness and create a life aligned with our deepest purpose. This is the space where misfits find their enlightenment. Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and in today's episode, I have a very, very special guest here. This is Alison. She is a Spiritual Biz Witch. Welcome, Alison. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
I'm excited that I'm here. Thank you.
Can you share your personal journey of healing and who you are and why you call yourself the Spiritual Biz Witch?
Yes, I'll start with who I am because you guys are probably like, what's a biz witch? It's probably exactly what you're thinking, but I am a business coach and marketing mentor for spiritual coaches, healers, light workers who are looking to increase their income and impact, creating irresistible as fuck brands. I was not always a business coach. I never thought in a million years I would be a business coach or a marketing mentor. So that'll be a little bit of explaining my journey there. But yeah, Spiritual Biz Witch is what I call myself. And my journey, where do I start? I think I'm going to start a little bit more like nowadays and then roll back a little bit. So in 2019, I started to experience my second spiritual awakening. This one was an ego death, essentially. And as I went through this really uncomfortable transition period, I had this like deep feeling of I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. So I used to work in policy, which is hilarious because I'm a total tinfoil hat wearer now. But that was part of my ego death too, right? Like I was like, oh, maybe what I'm doing is not so helpful. So that was really hard for my human side to accept. So as I was going through this period of transition, I just started kind of following a series of intuitive nudges that made absolutely no sense. So I was in my yoga teacher training at that time. I always knew I wanted to teach yoga just because I love it. And I was like, maybe I should become a life coach. I didn't know what a life coach was, but I had never worked with a life coach. I was not plugged into that on the online space, but I Googled spiritual life coaching, found a certificate program, did that, got a bunch of other certificates under my belt. And the next thing you know, it was 2021. I was 10 months into working with my first business coach. I had finally hit my first 5-figure month, and I had put my resignation in at my career I had had for 11 years. And then I worked as a spiritual life coach, mostly doing trauma-informed work for the first 3-ish years of doing this work before I transitioned. And I guess this is where we can kind of start to segue into emotional resiliency, trauma, etc. Now that could be like several episodes because I, like you, Lauren, I have had multifaceted trauma starting from a young age, up until, if you want to consider chronic illness trauma, my 30s, moving through chronic illness. So I think that when people experience trauma, they have that choice. And you talk about this in your I help statement about helping you go from victim to victor. And you do have that choice to be the victim or be the victor. And fortunately, for whatever reason, my constitution is very hardwired to be the victor. So that's made me very emotionally resilient. And when I was in my first coaching program with my business coach, I realized I was doing a lot better than other women in the space as me. And some of them had had their skin in the game longer than me. And I sat back and reflected, and part of it was strategy, right? Like you have to know marketing and sales. And I did catch on to that stuff very quickly. But a really big part of it was I believe I have experienced post-traumatic growth. And so you know, where the challenging things in my life have helped create this mindset of an energy of like, well, if I've been through that, I can go through this. Nothing can hold me back now. And I do think emotional resiliency is a super important part of being a successful business owner. So I know I just word vomited a lot, so I'll pause there in case you want me to like expand on something, or if you found something that you want to pull out to ask a few more questions about.
Yeah. So one of the questions I wanted to ask about would be the trauma part, because I feel like just with my own clients and just an entrepreneur, even somebody building, I should say, their business, or not even starting or whatever, they just need to take that first step, right?
Yeah.
They'll like, especially, I'm not sure, people listening, they don't even know who you are, but I do talk about you to my clients, and they do know that you are my mentor. So, this is her if you're listening. And then throughout the episode, you'll know why I feel so connected to her. But anywho, the one question that I do want to ask that has came up in a lot of my sessions lately with my clients is that they use trauma as a reason to not move forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you talk a lot about that too. So do you have advice that you could potentially give somebody that's starting out, even somebody that's seasoned, that why to kind of like maybe lean into that versus using it as a reason of not to continue?
So it's scary to build a business, 1,010%. And when we go have very traumatic experiences in our lives, what I have found that is, people tend to gravitate, depending upon their programming, depending upon their conditioning, to either lean more into like a fight, flight, or freeze, or even fawn response. Fawn would be people pleasing, for those of you who aren't familiar with that. And so, on one hand, if you find yourself getting paralyzed in fear when you set out to do something new, whether that is starting your business, whether that is going on the dating app, like whatever that is, right? You need to pause and remind yourself that this is your brain trying to keep you safe. This is your brain trying to keep you safe. So when you find yourself in those situations, when going to start a business or post that thing online or show up on an Instagram live or join the dating app, like whatever it is, and there feels like there's a lot of resistance, that's usually an indicator that your brain, which is a component of your central nervous system that governs the fight or flight response, is trying to keep you safe. And so why lean into something that feels unsafe to you? Well, first off, our brain is literally hardwired in a way to, I don't know a better way to say this, but sometimes it sabotages us, and it sabotages us, and it keeps us from listening to spirit, our intuition, the thing that's leading us towards what we feel inclined to do. And if you're that person, if you get in that, like, I feel too afraid to do this right now thing, that's probably an extension of your programming. And so you've probably been the kind of person, you've probably been conditioned throughout whatever your unique trauma experience has been to find safety in not doing, to find safety in staying where you are. So if you want to break patterns, and if you want to create new neural pathways, those are the little things in our brain that create, what's the word I'm looking for? Habit. If you want to do this, you have to be willing to do something new. But this is also where mentorship comes in handy as well too. And I'm not just even talking about mentorship like me, but like Lauren, right? So maybe you're not an entrepreneur. Maybe there are some things you want to do that's really frightening, right? This is where mentorship comes in handy, because yes, I do have a constitution that has led me to being able to be a cycle breaker, but I sure as shit wouldn't be here if I hadn't worked with my own coaches, healers, and had support systems as well too. So it's kind of two-pronged. One is, if you find yourself in that resistance, well, know that you're going to stay there unless you make the active decision to break patterns and create new neural pathways. But number two, it's a whole lot easier to break patterns and create new neural pathways when you have support.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. I was going to say, and the one thing that you also touched on too was that, when you had said, to lean into it and kind of ask yourself, maybe you didn't say it this way, but this is the way that I took it, as like to ask yourself those questions of like, what's happening? Why is this happening? I feel like when I had talked to a couple of the clients I've talked to this past week, they have been so stuck for months because of that. So it's like something that they have questioned over and over and over again. What advice would you give somebody if they are stuck in that loop? Of course, I'm here, but it's like, if I don't know, my projector style, if I don't know, then I'm not invited to come in. So I would not reach out to them.
So it sounds like a bit of analysis paralysis, right? So
Yeah.
fun fact, guys. If you are an overthinker, if you are someone who intellectualizes things, that is a trauma response that is done to help you make you feel safe by understanding and intellectualizing the situation at hand. So I worked with a somatic trauma healer for about 6 years in my own journey. And I'm also certified as a somatic trauma practitioner. So even though I'm a business coach, I support my clients in other ways because running a business is triggering as hell. But if you find yourself in that analysis paralysis, if you find, it's one thing to be like, why I feel like this? Oh yeah, that one time that this happened, it made me retreat to myself. It feels very familiar. I'm trying to keep myself safe. That's good, right? And then you move forward. If you're unable to move forward, if you're stuck in that analysis paralysis, honey, you're just trying to make yourself feel better. That is a coping mechanism. And this is a really good time to stop, to drop into the body, to ask your body, what are you feeling? How can I move this out? And then after you do something, like whether, or if you have a mentor like Lauren, check in with Lauren. If you have a mentor like me, check in with me and be like, okay, I'm in this analysis paralysis. I need to move forward. If you don't know how to move forward, if you don't have tools, somatic tools are mind-body tools to help heal trauma, just so y'all know. If you don't have somatic tools, if you don't know how to use your design to go from point A to point B, if you don't know how to do that, that's when you check in with your mentor. If you don't have a mentor, it's time to get one. If you are stuck in analysis paralysis, though, I want you to first and foremost know that intellectualizing your trauma is 1,010% a trauma response that keeps you exactly where you are. So you have a choice. You have a choice to seek help. You have a choice to implement tools if you've been taught tools so that you can go from A to B, right? But those are some of the options that you have. And if you don't have those tools to go from A to B, well, then it's time to get support so that you can develop tools to go from A to B.
Yes, I love that. So when you can you kind of specifically speak about your own fears or challenges that have related to trauma? Kind of like where you used to be to where you are now that you faced in your own entrepreneur journey?
Oh my gosh. So I have to admit, by the time that I got into the entrepreneurial space, I had done so much work on myself that it fortunately was not at the capacity to holding me back from doing scary things. In fact, my motto for myself and my clients is constantly, you don't have to be fearless, but just courageous. And so it was really easy for me to flex my courage muscle. So I will say that part was really helpful. And this is why emotional resiliency is such an important part of the entrepreneurial journey. However, prior to that, man, there were so many different things I went through, and I went through a lot of stuff fairly young. I mean, in my 20s, I was in a abusive relationship. When I was, oh man, when I was real little, I was viciously bullied. Man, you guys, bullying is like some of the worst trauma. So I have scoliosis and I have a titanium rod in my back. I had spinal surgery when I was 13. And I remember prior to surgery, I have like this vivid memory of we had a long driveway. I grew up in the country of Alabama, walking down the driveway, and I had like a strange like little bit of a walk to me because of my back, and the mean boys yelling out of the window calling me peg leg. And I remember just like crying the whole way down, and my innocent little thought process is like, maybe if they see me cry, they won't want to hurt my feelings. How sad is that? So there's been that. There has been sexual, abuse. There had not, fortunately, I just want to, not from my family, but I encountered that. I know that a lot of times that's intermingled with family, so I wanted to mention that. And just it's truly been multifaceted. Even broke my back when I was 21. So medical trauma, right? So when you have a lot of different types of trauma from different things, that can turn into complex PTSD, right? Fortunately, I don't know what about my soul contract has led me to being so resilient, but it was just like I just wouldn't let it get me down, you know? I remember when I equate, you know, entrepreneurship a lot to like my journey playing sports. First time I stepped out on the basketball court when I was younger, I was terrible at it. And it really fucking pissed me off that I was terrible at it. So I was like in third, fourth grade, I was like, Mom, sign me up for basketball camp. And then I would spend hours outside shooting hoops, getting good at my craft. And I've just kind of always, you know, and that's that victor mentality, right? Of like, yeah, bad shit happens to everybody. And me explaining my trauma to you guys is by no means for you to feel bad for me, but as much as for me to relate to you and know that like, I get it. But if you want to start that business, if you want to thrive as a business owner, if you want to, whatever it is you want to do, you have to choose resiliency. You have to choose the victor mindset. And if you don't know how to do that, that's when you ask for help. I just mentioned a minute ago, I worked with someone for 6 years in somatic trauma, like somatic, you know, therapy to help me process this stuff in my body. So it's hard to pinpoint when I stepped into my entrepreneurial journey what it was like, because I had done so much work on myself by then. But because I've had those experiences, I can definitely see certain things in other people and still relate to them on a human level. Plus, I have all those like certifications and trainings behind my belt, which I think also helps. I will say the scariest thing though that I've ever done in my business, like the absolutely most terrifying thing I ever did, was when I came out of the light language closet and I channeled light language um, on Instagram for the whole world to see. Because I live in the Washington, D.C. area, folks. So like the people in the area where I live are like really practical, non-wooey people. And I was like, everybody I know in real life who's watching this is going to think I am clinically insane. So that was probably the scariest shit I've had to do in the business world.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, yeah, I definitely, I was going to say, I definitely can relate to a lot of that stuff. And I actually was connecting a lot of things when you were talking about, you know, having emotional resilience. And I didn't realize, I guess I did realize it, but I never really kind of identified as it, that I also had the same thing. You know, like I've always had, I remember having that victim mentality, but then that was just going through what I needed to go through to get to that, you know, to get to that other side. And I realized, you know, I always did it for myself. Obviously, I've had other mentors too, but I've always did it for myself ever since I was like, you know, 5 or 6. It's because I had to, you know, it was like something that was built inside of me that I just had to do this. And it's actually funny now when I look back and people are like, you've just had such a hard life. And I'm like, I don't think it's been that hard. Like, I always can look at the other, it's like, I don't think it's been that hard. Like, I always look at it from like, I guess it's just what I accepted. You know, I chose to come here. And I always tell people that. And that's triggering to them because they're like, I didn't choose this. I'm like, you did.
You
But you
did.
did. I mean, when somebody first told me that, when I had that awareness, I was like, I chose all of this. This is just insane. But anywho, yes, thank you for sharing all of that.
You're welcome. I know I
Now,
went off kilter a little bit, but here we
no,
are.
no, it's okay. Um, so I want to kind of before we wrap up, I want to kind of talk about like maintaining balance between your professional, like, you know, business responsibilities, because I know that that can be very difficult. I know that we just talked about this last week, but in your container, but like responsibilities and like what you need to do in your business versus like how do you maintain that balance between your personal healing and your business?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, I would even add into there, it's not just your own personal healing and your business, but it's probably also like your social life, your
Yeah.
relationships, you know, all those things too. So I want to pause for a minute and talk a little bit about the masculine and feminine. We know that masculine energy is go do energy. We know that feminine energy is lean back, receive energy, if you want the like super Cliff Notes version. And a business is inherently masculine. It just is. If you want to be a business owner, it is inherently masculine. Now that goes also down to like learning marketing and sales strategy. Like I often teach my clients, right? Includes that stuff, but also it's just like work. It's work to run a business. And it's ludicrous to think that you can just like lay around, especially towards the beginning of your business, lay around in a bathtub and receive like 5-figure payments. Like that's just not how it works. So I always like, but the thing is too, also with a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs that I work with, not all, but a lot, they come in with that lean back energy because, being tapped into the spirit realm, being connected to the universe, the multiverse, in those sorts of ways, that requires trusting your intuition and being in your feminine. And that's great. I have that too, right? Like I see auras, I'm an intuitive, yada, yada. So when you're running a spiritual business, you need to have that balance of go, do, and rest, receive. Now, depending upon the person, they are going to have a challenge of being more in their masculine, like that's more me, or being more in their feminine. And I do believe that everybody's constitution is a little bit different, meaning even though I am a woman, so I hold more masculine energy. I've had a lot of past lives as a man than maybe another woman, right? So we all have our own constitution. The imbalance happens with masculine when you are hustling, when you are grinding, when you are burning out. And the imbalance in the feminine happens when you don't fucking do work. When you get victim mentality is inherently a wounded feminine energy, just so you folks know. Like if you're like, nobody liked my post, I'm going to give up. This sucks. Like, right? So these are the two contrarians. So how do you find that balance? Well, it's very individual on the person, right? Because already we know that different people have different constitutions. And so why do people lean into I give up victim energy? Or why do people lean into I'm going to hustle and burn myself out energy? Because it makes them feel safe. The actions or inactions they're taking are an extension of their programming from what? Childhood, trauma, whatever, right? So it goes back to recognizing your tendency. Am I a hustler? Am I a lean backer? Which one do I need to bring more of into my life, into my business? And then getting to the root cause of it, right? And figuring out a way to develop healthier coping mechanisms so that when you do find yourself leaning more into one or the other, or maybe you vacillate between the two as someone, then you know how to pause and pull yourself out of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. And people there, people that listening to this, that a lot of them know about their human design. So, and a lot of them are projectors, even manifestors too, because she's a manifestor. But yeah, I actually operated like a generator, and I feel like most projectors and even manifestors before they knew
Yeah.
what they were operated as generators, because that's where most of the world operates as
Yeah.
manifesting generators and generators. So when I realized that was this huge turning point 8 years ago, when I realized I don't need to operate like this anymore. I mean, obviously that's the, like you said, Cliff Notes version of that. Obviously, a lot of things like play in part with that. But when I realized that I actually to do less actually gave me more, it was, and I still do that too. Like I still try, it's that balance that I don't really believe in balance, to be honest. The word I probably should use is more like harmony. If I tune into my emotions, do I feel like doing this? And if I don't feel like doing this, why? Is it because I literally have no capacity to do it? Or is it because I'm fearful of whatever? So if it's a fear-based emotion, I obviously know I need to do some work. You know what I mean? Or if it's, I literally am just exhausted, nothing I do in that time is going to, and that goes, I feel like I don't even want to speak about just projectors. I feel like that goes for any human being. I feel like if they're just mentally exhausted, physically, emotionally, and mentally, nothing that you do is going to work. So like, just stop. Like it's easy, just stop. And then the next day that you try again, it'll be so much easier. I just know that's literally when I don't have any other advice to give myself and I don't want to listen to whatever guidance I'm given, that's literally what I do. So
No,
I would love to hear your I would love to hear your advice on any of that.
well, I was just gonna say, I like how you even mentioned like pause. Why do I have this resistance? Is it because I really need to honor this like lean back energy of my design? Or is this because I'm afraid to do something? And these are why we need to pause and get introspective. You know what I mean? This is why we take those moments to get curious, because sometimes it's one or the other.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's one or the other. Um, I used to be a total workaholic in my 9 to 5. I remember staying at the office till like 7 o'clock or whatnot. So I'm a manifestor to those chiming in. And with our design, we go through initiating cycles and then we go through rest cycles. And I'm coming out of a deep rest cycle because I just finished launching my Get Paid program. And then I wasn't physically tired, but I was just like energetically tired, like uninspired. And there's definitely ways to work around this in your business, because I have all sorts of things up my sleeve that help me stay present on social media and do what I need to do without expending much energy. But I remember in my previous lifetime at my 9 to 5, because that's how, like you said, how the world operates. It's a constant go, go, go. And so I immersed myself in that. And, you know, it really detached me. Getting so immersed in my previous career and my all the things around it really detached me from my spiritual side, the part of me that like really enjoys being connected to source and all of my interests in spirituality, because I was very wrapped up in that. And then I met my husband, my then boyfriend, now husband, and I didn't know his human design now, but now I know he's a projector, and he's a projector who leans into that projector energy. And it has been like the best thing ever, because as we started dating, I slowly stopped working as late. And now as a business owner, if I find that I am kind of getting into that space of I haven't done enough today, he'll be like laying horizontal on the couch. He's like, it's good to take time off, just put the computer down. And just having someone say that to you sometimes just makes you feel like, okay, I can do that. I don't know. I feel like this probably didn't answer your question, but that's where my brain took me.
No, I was gonna say no, it did, because when people ask me for my advice or like guidance, now my boyfriend is, and same thing, he's an emotional projector. So I actually realize I've helped him in the dynamic of, if you date a projector and you are a projector, it can be very difficult. It's easier. I feel like it's easier when I do people's comparison charts, when I read them. It's so much easier for a generator to just understand that is just how they are. And but two projectors together can get a little bit crazy. So when I tell him he needs to just, hey, I usually suggest, I don't tell him anything, but I'll say, hey, I suggest, I think you're tired. If I'm tired, I know for a fact he's tired. Just rest. And he's like, it's like that one more thing. I got to do like that one more thing. But he just, he's learning that when his energy is done, it's completely done, so I love that your husband is like that, because he definitely understands his energy.
Like, I'm pretty sure if you asked him what a projector meant, he'd be like, I don't know, it's just not something he's really plugged in on, but he very intuitively leans into his design. And now that I know what human design is, I can see it so clearly. And I think we're such a good pair as a manifester and a projector. But this isn't a dating show. But if anybody wants to hear our funny story about how we went on our first date, just DM me, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I was gonna say I want to know.
I initiated. It was basically like online dating. He shot me a message, Cliff Notes version, guys. And like after like a day or two of texting, I was literally like, all right, here's my number. If you want to go out, send me a message. Let's get the show on the road, sort of thing. Like total manifester.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, so even before you knew that, I was gonna say you kind of that's just kind of how it happened. And that's just kind of how it happened for me. So I guess the message here is, if you're listening to this and you do not know your human design, you might want to go check that out. The link is below whatever you're listening to that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so how can people get in contact with you, Alison, if they want to work with you, or check out any of all your goodness?
So I got rid of my website. So Instagram's probably the best way to find me. So my handle is the @ Spiritual Biz Witch, all one word. Come visit my Instagram page, shoot me a note, say hello. I'm very friendly. So that's probably the best way to find me.
And I'll make sure all of your links are in the,
Cool.
if they're watching the video, or because I've noticed that a lot of people are watching videos now, so on YouTube, or listening to the audio. So, well, thanks so much for joining us on today's episode with Alison on the Enlightened Misfits podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe. You can leave a review, and then share this episode with somebody that you feel that would gain knowledge from listening to this. Stay tuned for more captivating conversations in the future. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next time. Thank you for joining us on another enlightening episode on the Enlightened Misfits podcast. If you resonate with this conversation and found it insightful, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Your feedback fuels our mission. Remember, your journey to unwavering certainty and purpose is ongoing. Stay connected with us on social media, and let's continue this conversation. Let's manifest greatness in our lives. Until next time, this is Lauren from the Enlightened Misfits podcast. Stay enlightened, stay inspired, and keep manifesting your extraordinary path.